Okay, now we're going to begin to creating our game. We're going to begin to create our game. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a whack-a-mole game eventually. Now, what does that look like? Let me just play this game. So here it is. So basically, you got a mole on the ground, and you whack it, and you get points. And you know, hide, etc. So we create something like this. But before we can do that, we're going to take one step in between. And let me just close this. We're going to do something called clicks per second. Something like this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do this click speed test. Okay, basically as we click, it tells us how many clicks per second we do. And it tells us, you know, what kind of animal we are. So this is what we're going to do. And let's get started. So let's hide me. In order to do that, we first have to design our game. So what we're doing here is coding, programming, but we also have to do some game design. That's when we actually, you know, come up with what the game's going to look like. So let us open a whiteboard for that, and let's start designing. Now, normally how developers do that is that, you know, they go on a board and they actually start talking to each other and doing it. Perhaps grab a piece of paper. We're just going to take a whiteboard and we're going to start designing. So first of all, here is our browser window. Okay, let's make it better. Okay, here's our browser window. It's a little ugly looking. We have our, you know, close button here, and we have some kind of address, www.clicks per second. Actually, no, let's call it whack-a-mole.com. And well, let's think about how we want it to look like. First of all, we might want to have, you know, some kind of a message here that says something like the game or whack-a-mole or something like that. Maybe we want it highlighted nicely. Maybe it's one like a header, so it's going to be like a nice looking header. Maybe we want a footer, which is going to give us credits. So we can go something like, and we can say made by Greg B. And just an FYI, never give out your full name. So never put your full name on the internet. You can just put maybe your first name or your, you know, like your nickname, Greg the Wise. Why not? I'm going to talk about myself, might as well say good things. And that's how it's going to look like. And well, where will the game go? Well, the game would go here. So what would it look like? Well, it would be eventually some kind of a box, right? And the moles would come out. So the mole would come out, and we would have a, actually, let's see, I have some kind of a hammer, and then we whack them all, and we get points. So that's kind of a game design. Of course, games get much more complicated than this, but this is a start. So why don't we focus right now on designing the header and the footer? So everything outside of the actual game here. So why don't we start with that? And let me make it maybe a little bit smaller here so we can see it as we're building it. Maybe like here. Okay, so we have this reference here, and let's start actually writing the code for this. So maybe the title. Let's. This is how you, by the way, should have your HTML looking right now. So maybe we change the title to, let's just call it generically the game. Okay, and we're going to change it later. So the title will be the game. So go ahead and do that now. Change the title to say the game. And then this hi friend, well, this hi friend here, that's what we want to say. We want to say the game, and it should be red with some kind of a background. So why don't we try to simply say the game. And we're going to remove this H1. Okay, we're just going to put it like this. In fact, I'm going to get rid of all of this. Okay, let's save this. And let's see how it looks like. Okay, the game. Let me zoom out to 100%. Okay, that's how it looks like. So obviously this is that's not looking right. We want it to be red, we want it to be centered, and we want some kind of a background. Now, how do we do that? There is something in HTML called a div. So you know how we had like a B tag? Well, there's a div tag. And div means, very strange name, really means box. Okay, it's just a way of saying there is some kind of, oops, I have to put the, there's something inside and it's around the box. So if I save that, again, always remember to save and refresh, as you can see, nothing has changed. It looks exactly the same. And the reason why is because the div does not look like anything. It is just a way of wrapping some text around so that we can make the text look in a certain ways. So why don't you go ahead and implement this? Write a div and the game, save, refresh, and make sure it looks like this. Come back when you're done. Okay, so let's make this full screen and see how this div looks like. Let me right click here and say inspect. I do that, and as you can see, I have this div. And when I move my mouse over the div, see how it's blue? There's a blue line all around. So that's the div. That blue area, that's the div. It's a box basically, but it doesn't show up as anything. But we're actually going to do something with it. We'll see in a moment. So let me close that. Put this here again. Now what can we do? We want the game to be color red. That's how we started. So why don't we change the color? Now how can we do this? Well, we know how to make things bold, right? We just said B. So maybe if we put something like red and close red, maybe that will work. Let's try it. So saved, refresh. No, that doesn't quite work. Maybe we should say something like color, color equals red. It seems that Windows actually, or Visual Studio actually even created a close tag for us. So let's save that and let's see. No, that doesn't work either. Now we could be trying all the time, but that's not the way to really go. Okay, we shouldn't be guessing. I'm just letting you know how we can kind of try to figure things out and, well, really get nowhere. So how do you make things red? Well, when there's a special way of styling or putting a look and feel on a particular HTML element. The way we do that is we can actually go right here into this HTML element. We can add a style tag, okay, or style attribute. And see how I'm starting to type when I put an S, T. See how it shows me what are the possible things that I can write here. So Visual Studio helps me out by saying, okay, you want to add an attribute to this div tag. Well, here are the possible attributes. Okay, we're obviously not going to understand them all, but if I type in ST, it says, aha, there is something called style. And note that it's selected, so I don't even have to finish writing it. All I have to do is press tab. And Visual Studio knows that style has to be shown this way, equals, and then open and close colon. And what that means that here inside we can put things that will change the way this whole div looks like. One thing I can do, for example, I can say color, and you see how it comes up and says, oh, there is something called color. What does it do? Color of an element's text. Okay, so it's this HTML element, and I will be able to color its text. So let me try that again. Color, and again, I just press tab. Then the syntax is that I put semicolon, and now it actually comes up with the list of colors I can do. And I can do red, I can do, say, crimson, or any other color. And I can save that, come back here, refresh, and voila, now we got it red, although crimson to be exact. So go ahead and type that in. Be very careful. It has to be equals and semicolon. Sorry, this quote here, there has to be semicolon, all of that stuff. Please be careful when you do that. So go ahead and build this. Come back when you're done. So this worked, but one thing we have to do is at the end of this, we have to put a semicolon. That is the same button for the colon icon, but without holding the shift. And this means end. So it means whatever I was trying to tell the computer to do here, I'm done, I'm finished. And you see how this creates the end here? Same thing for the end tag. We have this /div. So computers are very, very specific. If you don't have these end tags, if you don't have these things that say over, then things kind of go wacky. So there. Okay, so that's that. And we need to make this look like this. So this one has a background color of some kind. So why don't we put maybe a background color on this? Can you think of a style that would allow you to put a background color? Maybe something to do with background. So when I start typing, I want to say back, and see how it gives me ability to. It shows me every key or every style that's available. And see, it says background, and look at this background color. So I can double click on that, or I can, with my arrow keys, simply scroll down here and press tab. Background color. And in fact, as I'm typing it and I select it, it actually tells me here on the right, tells me what it does. It says color used for an element's background. Well, the element that we are styling is a div element, so therefore background color should put a color for the background, for the back of it. So let's just finish that. So background color, and when I hit semicolon, I actually now have a choice of colors. And I don't know, peach. How about peach puff? That looks about right. Okay, and let me save this and come back and refresh. And voila, now we've got the background color. And now maybe we want it centered. Well, there's a way of centering also in using a style, but there's no such style as center. The style that we want to use is text alignment. And what that means is we're going to be able to say this text, where is it? Is it on the left of the box? Is it on the right of the box? In the middle, etc. So let's go in here and start typing it. Text align, but look what's happening here. I want to say align, and I'm getting colors. Okay, and then it's telling me align. Oops, align is not a valid value for the background color property. So it thinks that this, what I'm writing, is a value for a background color. So background color is a style, and we set peach stuff. But if you probably notice, we forgot to end it. So this is an example. So when we had it like this, and we saved it, it still worked. Why? Well, because the browser is a little bit forgiving. It looks at it and finds, oh, you have a semicolon here, which means you're finishing the style tag. It knows this, you're finishing this. So you probably meant to put a semicolon. So it kind of inserts it for you. But if I try to put something else without putting a semicolon, then things actually would not work. And I'll show you that in a moment. Let me make this a little bit wider like this. maybe like that. How about like this? I'll make this a little bit smaller. There we go. So align text, or is it text align? Oh, text align, here it is. Tab, semicolon, and you can see it tells you different options. So let's use center, and I will just double click on center, and I'll put a semicolon so that we're right. And I'm going to save this and refresh, and as you can see, it is nicely now centered. Okay, but if I forgot to put a semicolon here, and I saved, and I refreshed, well, then not only is it not centered, also doesn't have the background color. Why? Because the computer thinks that you want to set the background color to this color. And well, this color doesn't exist. There's no such thing as peach puff text align center. So this is where it's the ending, semicolon is very important. The moment I put a semicolon, see how it says blue? It's saying blue because Visual Studio, this program, thinks that this whole thing is a value for the background color. But the moment you press semicolon, this is red. It says, aha, that's the style, and that is the value. So let me save this. Go back here, refresh, and there we go. Okay, last thing is on our design here, the game is much larger. It's this is too small, so let's make it larger. So we want to change its font size. So what kind of a style you think would be used to change the font size? Well, maybe font dash size, and look at that, there is a font dash size. So some things are very intuitive, and you can kind of figure it out. Font size, and here you could specify, see, it gives you an example, font size 12 pixels. So if you're using any word processor, you kind of say, it's an 8-point, 12-point font, etc. Well, you can do that, but you can also simply say large or extra large, etc. So one of the things is, for example, extra large. So let's choose that, semicolon to end, refresh, and there you go. You know what? I maybe want a bit larger. So there's another one called extra large. Save, refresh, and now it worked. So go ahead and implement this. So I need you to add all of this to the style, and be very, very, very careful when you do that. Remember, one character and all of it breaks down. So do that and come back when you're finished. So that works, but I don't know about you, but this is getting pretty ugly. I mean, I can imagine that I'm going to add more styles to this. And then, well, if I actually have my screen the way we had it before, like this, then I don't get to see what actually is the text. I'll have to scroll here and see, aha, it says the game. Well, there is a better way of doing things. Remember, computer scientist, coder always tries to make his life easier. So what can we do is, well, we set the style of an element div by putting it here. We call this in line, in the line of the div. What we can do is take out all of that and put it outside of this line so that it looks better. How do we do that? We go to the very end and we type in style. Okay, we create a style tag and we say close style. Okay, we do that. And inside here, we can actually put all these styles. So what does that mean? So look at the body tag. The body tag says everything in between these tags is the content of the document, where the stuff goes. The HTML, everything in between the HTML is HTML. In the head, everything in between here is something which is like metadata, some information about your application, like the title of your game, of the page, things like that. So the style tag says whatever you put here is basically styles. Now what can you do here? In styles, you can say you can say that you would like to put a style on an element called div. And the way we do that is put div. We say div, and I want the div to have a certain style. And we say which styles it wants to have by using these curly brackets. And this is just to the right of the P key with a shift. So you, on the side of the key, there is this kind of a bracket, but with a shift, you have this kind of a bracket. And Visual Studio automatically creates the end bracket for you. So I'm going to hit enter here to have like a line. And what I can do, I can make this larger. I can take out everything that is between the quotes. See very carefully, it has to be between the quotes. I take everything between the quotes. I right click, I cut it, and I paste it here. Paste, and it gets automatically nicely formatted. See how much easier it is to read the different styles? And I can actually remove this completely. And let me save, come back here, refresh. And if everything was done correctly, nothing should change. And yep, I'm refreshing and nothing has changed. It looks exactly the same. And the reason why is because those two things were exactly the same. So the way this works is that it says, listen, whenever you see an element of div, apply these styles to it. So these styles get automatically put to every div. So I would like it to do that now, but let me revert back and I'll show you exactly what we're doing one more time. And then you can, and I'll highlight the things that you must do. So let me just, okay. So we add this style tag at the very end of our file. Inside the style tag, we say div, open and close curly bracket, space, and then we're copying all of this, or we're cutting it. Remember, it should look like this. It should say style equals quote, quote, empty. Then right click here, paste. Okay, so go ahead and do that now. This is what you must add. Come back when you're done. All right, I'm assuming you've tested it. You should. And it should appear this way. And also, let's go ahead and remove this style tag. We don't need it anymore. It's empty. And save. And refresh. Everything looking good. So go ahead and do that. Come back when you're finished. So I hope you can agree that it's so much easier to read this HTML. Like I know there's a div tag and it says the game. How it's going to look like, well, I can see it when I actually run it. I don't have to read those styles every time. So it's just much easier to read. So this is how things are done. This is how it should be done. You could put the styles directly into a div, and sometimes people do that when you're doing something very, very quick or just experimenting. But really, this is how you should do things. Now, something I wanted to stress now. Imagine what will happen if rather than saying style, you put styles. Well, it makes sense. This area is full of styles. Let's just say you set styles. Let's save this, come back and refresh. What happens? Well, bad things happen. Not only is the game not styled, you actually see all of this div is actually put out as text, right? Well, we certainly don't want that. So what happened? Well, what happened is that there is no such tag as styles. Browsers and even Visual Studio does not recognize anything called styles. It only recognizes style. Now imagine if you're a human being and you kind of read this and you were going through it very quickly, you would understand that this means style. If someone put it like this, or they put it like this, well, it looks so similar. You would kind of read it and say, okay, I know exactly what you mean. You want this to be a style. Well, computers don't think that way. Computers everything has to be exactly right. One character difference and things go bad. So let's remove this. So in fact, you have a little, because we're using Visual Studio and not Notepad, you have a lot of help. See, Visual Studio changed the color of all of this to black. And the reason why is because it's telling you, oh, I think that this is nothing but text, just like this text. There's no difference, which is why it got displayed as text here. But if I change it to style, then as you can see in a moment, Visual Studio says, aha, you're doing something special. This is not normal text. This is code. And this is a style, a bunch of styles that you want to apply to an element of type div. This, making a little mistake like that, or perhaps, forgetting an L, this is what we call a bug. You probably heard that term, you have a bug in your program. And if you heard it, we kind of use it and we don't think much of it, but ask yourself, why is it a bug? You mean like a fly or a cockroach? Why is that a mistake in a program? And I'll explain that, but for that, we have to go back all the way to 1950s and 1960s when computers first became usable. When computers first started becoming popular or maybe usable in, in corporations for different work, the way the computers were programmed is using punch cards. So punch cards were actual pieces of paper with holes made in certain specific areas. So take a look at our code here. We want to say character. When we're writing the code, we say character, kind of an open angle bracket, then character H, then character T, then M, L, and close. Well, the way I used to do it before is that each of these lines would represent one character. And depending on what kind of a character you wanted, you had to punch a hole in a particular location. And the computer would then look at that card and physically scan it, and it would look for holes, and it would then understand your program. It would read in your program. In fact, I have a video that shows how such a computer worked. Let me show you. So here's an actual video from an IBM from 1964. And as you can see, here's a keyboard, and a person will be typing in a program. And that program will be converted into these punch cards.
I think, imagine we just got it in my... So, V. There you go.
See, a card comes here.
Register. Off we go. There we go. The 29.
Okay, so as you can see, the card is coming out here, and eventually it's going to come out, and that's part of the program. Okay, and that's your first
program.
So
it prints beautifully. It makes nice holes. And
okay, so you would have these punch cards, and you would put them together. Let's see, can we open image in new tab? Can we get a bigger picture of this? Okay, not the best. But you would put these cards in a stack, and you would feed them into the computer one by one, and the computer would read these cards, and then it would actually be able to run your program. And there was sometimes a lot of these cards. As you can see how difficult it was. So what happened was, at one point in time, a computer program failed. So just like in our example, let me make this small. Just like in our example, we've missed the word, we missed the letter L. And the L would have been a hole in the punch card, but it was missed. Well, how was it missed? Actually, in between some of these cards, a bug, like a fly or a mosquito, got trapped. And that bug literally blocked one of the holes. And when the computer was reading it, it didn't register one of the holes. Okay, so you had a bug in your program. And a term for that stuck to this day, and we still say you have a bug in your program. Okay, so that's a bit of a history lesson, and I want you to be happy with how easy we have it now than before. Okay, so let's fix our bug. We put an L here. We Control S to save. Come back to our browser, refresh, and we're back in business. So you have to be very, very, very careful. And this little silly bugs like that is what is the most frustrating thing about software development, of programming, coding, whatever you want to call it. And this is where a lot of people get discouraged and think this is not for them. But once you learn to look for these things, they actually become very, very easy to catch. So bear with it. Okay, so we'll save and let's continue. So let's look at our design. So we have the header here, pretty cool, and we want that that footer that says "made by Greg," or basically our credits. Well, how do we do that? Well, we have the header using this div, so why don't we do the footer using a div? So I'm going to put div, and I want to say "made by Greg the Wise." Why not? And oh, I put this and see how it came up already here. And I can just hit tab and it's selected. And let me save. And let me try this. Let me refresh. And okay, it's displayed, but well, it's not the best because I don't want this to look the same as a header. We'll get that done in a moment. But for now, add a div and say made by Greg. Put your name there. Please put something here that you wouldn't be afraid to show to anybody, okay? Don't put anything there that's too silly. Say made by Greg, a nickname or something like that. Put your name or a nickname. So go ahead and do that and come back. Add this div into your program, refresh, and make sure it looks like this. Okay, so you've got this. Now a couple of things. First of all, I don't want it to look like this, but we'll deal with that later. I also want the made by Greg to be at the bottom, right? Somewhere here. So what can I do? Maybe I'll go here and say, okay, I want it like this. Let me save, then refresh. And well, nothing has changed. And you might remember from earlier that no matter how many white spaces you put here, we call it white space when there's nothing, it doesn't matter. A browser doesn't actually do anything with it. It just turns each of these spaces into one space. If you want a line break, you can put br, and you can just simply go like this. But the more proper way is to do it this way. That means it's a tag, which is both a start and an end tag. The detail not important, but if I put some of these here and I refresh, then I do have some space. And for every br, I'm going to have one line. So let me just make a few lines here, click save. Okay, it's good enough for now. We're going to be working on it. We're going to move this to the bottom later on. So go ahead and insert a bunch of BRs here, such that you have space here. You have space between the header and the footer, and come back when you're finished. Now I would like this footer made by Greg the Wise to look a bit more like that. I certainly don't want a background. I don't want it to be red. I want that line on top. Maybe we'll make it italics or something like that. So what can we do? Well, first of all, why is this happening? And you might kind of look at it and say, well, this is a div, and this is a div, and we are saying that every div should have these styles. So it's not surprising that the footer is also looking like a header. So what can we do? Well, fortunately, what we can do is we can kind of name these divs. And the way we can name them is, well, one thing we can do is we can set something called an ID. Second identifier, think of it like a name. And I can give it any name I want. I can just anything I want, doesn't matter. But obviously we want to be a bit more, the name should make sense. I'm going to call it header. Okay. And I'm going to save that. And then what I can do, I can say is, you know what? Don't apply these styles to every div, but only a div with an ID called header. And the way I do that is I say pound header, control save, refresh, and look at that. Now that's better. The footer is no longer styled, and the reason why is because this div does not have an ID. This pound sign means ID of header. only this div is being styled with this style tag or style command, whatever you want to call it. So go ahead and do that. And I'm going to highlight, oops, I'm just clicking all over the place, sorry about that. I'm going to highlight what you must change so that it's easy for you to do. So what you must do is you must add this header, make sure there's a space between the ID and div and the div and the ID, and then you have to add this pound sign, and the pound sign is right above the the 3 key and header. So go ahead, do that, refresh your application, and make sure it looks like this, and then come back when you're done. Okay, now we want to style this thing, which we've been calling it the footer. So since we've been calling it the footer, why don't we give it an ID of footer? So I'm going to put space, ID equals footer. And again, that doesn't have to be footer, it could be anything. Could be any name, could be any set of characters, doesn't matter. And then I'm going to add a style tag. I'm going to say div with an ID. Oh, look, it even comes up here. It says, oh, I only know about 2 divs with such a footer, with such a such an ID. So I say footer, open curly bracket, close. And well, I certainly want it to be centered. Well, how do we center it? Well, I know that because I centered the header. So I know that this centers the header. So I can highlight it, copy, paste. Then I'm going to save, Control S. I'm going to come back here, and I would expect this now to be centered. And yes, it is centered. So again, go ahead and implement this. Again, I'm going to highlight what you need to change. You need to add this space here, and then ID equals quote, quote, footer. Make sure you don't forget the quotes. And you need to add this. Okay, so add this. Make it a little bigger like this. Refresh, make sure it looks like this, and come back when you're done. Let's apply the rest of the styles. So I want this line on top. Now, how can we do that? Again, it's something that's difficult to figure out on your own. But as you kind of learn this more and more, you figure this out, you understand things much easier. But as you remember, this thing is actually a box that spans the whole width of the page. So let's see if we can maybe put a border around this box. Let's see what that does. Now, how do we specify a border? As you might think, we say border, okay? Then we do a semicolon. And when you create a border, you have to give it 3 properties. First, you have to say whether it's dashed, whether it's solid. I'm going to say dashed. Then you're going to have to say what color it is. I'm going to say red. And space, then you have to say how thick you want it to be. And I'll say 5 pixels. Semicolon. Okay, refresh, and I have a border like this. So you can play with this. You can say dashed. What else we have? Dashed, grooved. I don't know what that is. Let's see. Okay, what is that groove? Oh, okay, it looks kind of 3D. Lots of different options to play with, and you can play with that if you feel like later on. But that's all good. But you know, we don't want the border all around. We just want the top part. Now, can this be done? Yes, it can. And the way we can do that, we can say border, but not every border, just top. So border dash top. And we probably want it to be less thick, so maybe 1 pixel. We want it to be black, because that is what's in our design, right? And we don't want to groove, we want it to be maybe just simple. And the simplest thing is solid. Let's save that, refresh, and you know what? I dare say this looks pretty cool. So I want you to go ahead and add this border top to your footer style and come back when you're ready. And we're not showing it here on design, but you know what? Maybe it would be nice if this was italics, you know, the slanted text. How can we do that? Well, we've done the bold. So we went here, remember how we did the bold with a B, and we also did the I for italics. So we say everything from here on, so here, now I want to end the italics. Oops, I slash, my goodness, slash I, and I'm going to save that. Let's refresh, and it is indeed italics. And you can do that, but this is not a preferred way of doing it. If you are creating a style using the style tag, if you're describing how a particular text should look like, it's better to do it here. So why don't we remove this? Let me save again, refresh. Okay, I did remove the italics, it's good now. See how I save very often and refresh? This is very, very important. Whatever you do it in small steps. So here I want to put italics. So maybe I'll say italics. There's nothing called italics. Slashed. No, nothing like that. In fact, in order to make the text italic, we do something called text decoration. When you put colon, you have a bunch of things. Blink. Oh, let's see what blink is. Let's see. Nothing. Good, it's not implemented. What is dash, dotted, double? Let's see double. What is that? Nothing as well. Okay. What about, is there italics? Well, none of this seems to work. And in fact, this text decoration is not the right way to do it. I actually forgot how to do it. So the way you actually do this is you do something called font style. Font style. And you have a bunch of options. And here it is, italics. Let me save this, refresh, and now it is italics. My point in showing you this is that some things like font size, like color, are very, very intuitive. Something like making something italic using a font style property are not intuitive. So don't get frustrated if you can't figure something out. I will still show you how to actually go to help and find out what it is. For now, go ahead and implement this. Add this font style italics to your styles tag and make sure it is italicized. And come back when you're done. We are almost done creating our shell for the game. So the head and the footer. But the last thing I want to show you, the last, so to speak, trick, is you see how this is getting now too big to see everything? See how it's cutting off the footer? And if I want to see the entire CSS, then I don't see the HTML. What I can do is I can take this whole style, which is going to be growing and growing and growing, I promise you. We can move it to a completely different file. And the way we do that is we create a styles file. So go back to the file folder where your game.html is. So go ahead and do that and come back when you're there. Remember, it was documents, LTC for learn to code, and it should be here. Then create a new file. Right click, new, you can say text document, and erase everything and type in game.css. Okay, and click it. It's asking you, do you want to change the extension? Yes, I'm okay with this. So game.css. Do that now. Then I want you to edit this file in Visual Studio. So right click. Oops, what happened here? Right click, open with Visual Studio. So go ahead and do that, please. Okay, and we have that file. Make sure it's named game.css. What we can do is now we can go to the game.html and copy everything in between the style tags. So just the content of the style tag. Copy like this. Right click, cut it. So it should look like that. And paste it here. And save all the files. Let me show you again. So in the style tag, I select everything inside, cut it, and then paste it into CSS. So go ahead and do this. This is how your gonna put this like this. This is how your your HTML file should look like this. The style should be open, and your CSS should look like that. Come back when you're finished. Okay. So we're gonna save everything, and we changed both files. So you have this button called Save All. So we're gonna click that to save everything. And well, let's refresh and see what happens. So go ahead, save all this and refresh the page and see what happens. Come back when you do. It should be all messed up, just a little hint. It should look like this. And the reason why is because, well, the styles are empty. So what we must do is we have to take this file and bring it into the game. How do we do that? Well, we do this using the style tag, and we reference the file by name. Let me show you. Actually, we can remove this. So go ahead and remove that. It doesn't matter if it's there, it won't do anything. But then what you have to do is you have to go to the head tag, and you have to insert what we call a link. Okay, link. And you have to link in a, you have to basically tell this page where the CSS file is. And it's a little cryptic, so I'm going to just write it, and then you guys will be able to copy. REL, so you have to tell it what is it, and we'll say it's a style sheet, and see how it comes up here, style sheet, it knows what it is. So it's a style sheet, so it's basically like a styles tag. We have to say what type of file it is, and this is a text/CSS, see it comes up here, text/CSS, and we have to say where that file is, and it's href. It's a very weird name. Href equals, and in quotes we say game.css. So that is the name of this file, game.css. So you have to get this name and this name exactly right. And we're going to do slash and like this. When you see this slash and close, this is one of those special tags which does not have an opening and closing tag explicitly. It is just one tag, and it's closing and opening tag at once. And we do that by this kind of a syntax. And if we do this, we save it and we refresh, then the game is working again. So go ahead and add this text into the head tag. And again, you have to be very, very careful. One mistake here and it may not work. So do that and come back when you're finished. Okay, so we're done our styling, but let's see how this game.css works or how it looks like. So for this, just follow along. I won't ask you to do this. So I'm going to make this full screen. I remember how we could inspect the HTML by right-clicking and choosing inspect. Well, let's do that. And if I look at, if I click this tab here, sources, it tells me what are the files that build this web page. And as you can see, the first file is game.html. And here is the file that we did. And here is, let's make it maybe a little bit more like that. Okay, it's easier to see. And here is our link tag that we created. And because of this link tag, the browser knew that it has to load this game.css in order for things to work. And the browser tells you that it loaded it by actually listing it here. So the browser is saying, hey, this web page is made up of this game.html and game.css. Both of these files make up the web page. So, okay, I think we are ready to start coding our game. Actually, before we start coding the game, there's one thing more that I want to show you. I want to show you a little tutorial. There's a website called w3schools.com. It's a very good website for learning HTML and things that we're doing. So if I go there, I have this HTML video tutorial. I think that's the one. Yes, a little video tutorial that I would like you to see. And that, I hope, will explain and solidify some of the ideas that I was showing you.
Hello! So you want to learn how to make websites. In that case, you need to learn HTML. Let's start at the very beginning. What exactly is HTML and why do I need it? Let's break it down from the basics and build our way up. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It uses markup to describe the structure of web pages. The structure is built up by elements, and they are represented by tags. Tags label pieces of content such as heading, paragraph, table, and so on. These tags aren't shown in the page, but are used to display content in different ways. That's a lot to digest, so let's go into it. First, let's try it together. Don't worry about understanding, it'll all click as we work through it. We start by declaring that this is an HTML document. The HTML is the root element of any HTML page. The head contains meta information about the document. The title element specifies a title for the document. The body contains the visible page content. Finally, the H1 defines a large heading, while P defines a paragraph. With everything set in the order, let's go into the explanation of how tags work. Tags typically come in pairs, a start tag and the end tag. The end tag is written just like the start tag, but with a / inserted before the tag name. Here we've got the tag name and the / tag name, and the content of the element in between them. So if this was a paragraph, we'd use P / P and some text in the middle. Let's play a game. See if we can correctly match start and end tags together. So, what turns HTML code and elements into a viewable website? Well, that's where web browsers come in. The purpose of a web browser, be it Chrome, Firefox, Edge or Safari, is to read HTML documents and display them. But the browser does not display the HTML code. Instead, it uses it to determine how to display the document. Let's see what kind of building blocks are hidden behind this web page. This is a visualization of an HTML page structure. You can see the HTML, the head, with the page title below that, and then the body under that. And that's the basics. Let's delve into this further, but for now, take a break.
Okay.
Hello. So you
can use this website to learn a lot about HTML, and we will be using it, in fact, in the future.